Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I went to Rwanda, and I was doing some other work there. And I don't know how many of you know where Rwanda is, but it's a small country in Africa, and it's the most populated country in Africa per square foot. So I went there thinking that, oh yes, I know there was genocide there, and that was in 1994. But I wonder what it's like now. So the genocide was between the Hutus and the Tutsis, and 1 million people were killed in a matter of 3 months. The whole population of Rwanda now, I think, is 8 million. I could be a little wrong on that because it keeps increasing. So 8 million people and 1 million people were killed. That's significant. And the people who conducted the genocide were about 1 million people as well. So at first, I thought, okay, but it's been a long time ago, 1994, and maybe the effect has faded. So when I went to Rwanda, the thing that struck me the most is how resilient people were. There was resilience everywhere. But other things that I noticed were museums with skulls in them, like not one skull or two skulls, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of skulls and bones of people who had died there. I also noticed that there were some people were extremely sad all the time, and I realized that the impact of what happened in '94 is still alive right now. And although there's a lot of resilience there, but just walking down the street, let's say, you don't see a lot of adult males who are over 40 years of age because they were all killed. Most of the people who were killed were males. And then on the other hand, you have all these amazing females. Like I met many, many women whose children were killed by people who they are actually talking to now, or smiling up to now. I just didn't understand how they could do that. And it became a really compelling question to me. How can a mother whose 5 children were killed by a perpetrator still smile at this man, or smile at all for that matter, and share a soda with him? It felt like an impossibility. And I have children, and I know how I would feel if somebody did anything to my children, forget about killing them. So that's what drove me to do this film. I wanted to know if this was real. Is it true that this happens? That is it even possible to forgive and move on? So I also didn't want to make it about just Rwanda. I wanted to make it about the human condition. And so I do have different kinds of conflict in this movie. One of them is Israel and Palestine, which is still a very hot conflict. And the other is Ireland. And for those of you who will come to some screening at some point, you'll see where the lines have been drawn there. So, still in Rwanda, I had a wonderful driver, and he and I would chat constantly, and I would ask him 1,000 questions, and he would answer. So I asked him about his story. And his story was that his father and his brother were shot dead by his best friend, who lived down the street from them all their lives. So what happened was this guy took these 2 men to the grave because he didn't want to pull them there, and then shot them in the legs so that they fell into the grave, and that's how they died. And so I asked him, did you forgive them? Did you forgive him? This is a whole society where so much forgiveness is going on, and how could you forgive? So he said, well, I told him when he came and he said how sorry he was and how he repented what he had done. He said, well, I told him that I can't forgive you, but only God can, but I won't kill you. I'll never kill anybody who's in your family, and I won't kill you. With thinking that through, I thought, well, that is part of the spectrum of forgiveness, whether you want to call it that or not. It's a moving on. And it's very, very, very hard to define what forgiveness really is. Because even I, after having gone through 7 years about thinking about the subject, really don't know how to define it. The best term that I can think of, the best definition, was given to me by somebody who said that it is relinquishing all hope of a perfect past. And that's the closest I could get to a definition of forgiveness. Religions have different explanations. Religions have different meanings to it, like the Dalai Lama calls it compassion. But to me, all that is the same spectrum. On the other side is revenge and anger. So generally what I've seen so far is that the first response is always anger, wanting revenge. And there are some amazing people, though, who are in the movie who, even from the start, will say things like, you will not, when this woman heard about her son being killed, she said, you will not kill in the name of my son. And she wants the perpetrator out there. So what happened in Rwanda was, going back to Rwanda, is that they had, as I was saying, about 1 million perpetrators and no real justice system where they could do a case by case in a quick manner. Because if they started doing it in the way that we have the justice system here, it would take hundreds of years to do it. So they came up with this restorative justice system called gacaca. And gacaca is when the community gets together and a few people in the community who are supposed to have the most amount of integrity, whether they are Hutu or Tutsi, decide the fate of the person who comes, who's on trial. So I went to a lot of these trials, and I realized that in the courtroom or under the tree on the grass most of the time, there's not much anger between the people who are victims and the perpetrators. And I wondered about this, and I thought, oh, well, this whole society keeps talking about forgiveness, and what does that have to do with the fact that I don't see a lot of anger in the courtroom? But what people who were victims mostly just wanted to know is what happened to their loved ones. And so with that backdrop, I will have you see the trailer, and then we'll talk some more again.
My entire family was killed. I had 11 brothers. They had about 65 kids. No one is alive besides me.
She was 14 years old. We covered the princess. The 2 o'clock news said there was a bombing. She was 14.
In 1984, we targeted the Grand Hotel in Brighton.
My sister woke me up and said, "Which hotel is this, Dad? There's been a bomb in Brighton. It's on the news."
One of the dead is the MP, Sir Anthony Berry.
I was caught and sentenced to 8 life sentences, but was released after 14 years.
It was just after Patrick McGee had been released from prison that I actually began to feel the rage.
I think the immediate response is anger.
How can someone play God?
He didn't kill the government, he killed my dad. And now he's free.
You know, most people choose this path of revenge and retaliation.
How do you repair that kind of damage?
Out of the blue, I was contacted by Joe Berry.
I wanted to find alternatives to blaming.
You have to tell your own story, but you also have to hear the story of the enemy.
I realised that this was the beginning of another journey.
Joe Berry and Pat McGee.
And we were starting something together.
Forgiving is the most difficult act to make.
I'm ashamed to say it was the first time in my life that I met Palestinians as human beings.
The first day that I found out his name, there wasn't a soldier there. There was Charles.
We both paid the highest price possible.
Forgiving Charles wasn't going to change the past, but what it did do is change my future.
All of the things that I admire in you came from your father. That meant this was a fine human being, and I killed him. That's heavy.
In unusual circumstances, unusual things happen.
And I think the most important question that you ask yourself is, what can you do personally?
So oftentimes, I love question and answer because that's where I learn about most people, where their thoughts are. But oftentimes people think that forgiving is something weak and fighting for justice is something wrong. Something strong. And I think they're wrong because a lot of times I've seen that forgiving is it takes more strength than fighting for justice. Which is not to say one is better than the other. In every circumstance, there's a different thing. Like I asked a Palestinian gentleman in the West Bank, and he said, I said, so what about forgiveness? He said, would you ask a woman who's being raped to forgive? And he's right. There's a time for that, for fighting for justice, and there's a time to forgive and move on. But what I've seen is that complete healing cannot happen without some sort of reconciliation or forgiveness. I like to use the word forgiveness, although it has some religious connotations that people don't like, and they prefer the word reconciliation, but that's rhetoric. So, like for example, I had a friend, and her name was Gabrielle Roth, and she was raped in Germany. She was a dancer from New York, and she was raped in Germany, and she carried that in her body and her soul, and she felt almost like she was possessed with all the things that happened before or after the rape. But she stood in court, and she told the rapist, I forgive you. And that was the moment when she realized that she was no longer possessed by what was going on. She had let it go. And the way she phrased it was, I got my power back. So it's hard to, in 20 minutes talk about all this deep stuff and all that. And I would like to answer some questions as well. But what I've seen is the process is people get really angry, and then when something bad happens, and then they keep. The important thing is to tell the story of what happened, and when they break the silence, there's a big movement towards healing, and there's a big movement towards peace and forgiveness. So telling the story, breaking the silence, is a really important part of it. And the other part, of course, is hearing the other person's story. So my whole movie goes from a place of where people thought of the other or of the perpetrator as cockroaches, as not human, as not really, as the darkest thing on the planet, and as dirt and all this kind of stuff, to when they first start seeing that these people are human too. When the person offers them a soda, when they first pick it up and they look into his eyes and they say, wow, yes, he is human as well. So for you to experience a little bit of it, I'd like you to pair up, and I have a short exercise that you can do. Preferably with a person you don't know, but I would like you to sit facing each other. This is just a few minutes of feeling what is human in the other person as well. Are we ready? So look into this person's eyes. Know that this person was born just as you were, grew up, learned to walk, learned to feel the earth with her feet, just like you. Then this person grew a little more. Please look into each other's eyes, because this is humanity. This is a human person. No need to be self-conscious. This is the same person you are. And then the person grew older, and had the same issues you had, maybe zits or something, I don't know. Had the same sort of dating stuff going on and all that, and then finally grew into the person you see in front of you. So this person is as human as you are. This person is as self-conscious and wants to look away as you are. So I'll stop it there, but this is just a very, very, very small way of looking at the other, just as the person you are. Thank you, and I await your questions.